Is the light green on the mic?
Yes, it is. Okay, guys, today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of my research on successful people and kind of some of the areas of life that they kind of focus in on because this is a super broad topic. And so it's really nice to be able to have definitions and things where you can see different areas of life that you can focus in on. So that's what I'll be sharing with you today. Okay, and I want to start off with the premise that success is going to look completely different for a Christian than it would look for an unbeliever. The Bible verse I have for that is Matthew 16:24 through 25, which says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." And I think this is a really interesting way that the Bible likes to define success for us because it's kind of through the terms of like, what can you give and what can you sacrifice, which is kind of completely different than what we typically view success to be. For Americans, the American dream is kind of our standard for success, which is kind of the idea that like you want to climb the social and the economic ladder in order to be successful and like what can you accomplish and what can you do for yourself. But I think it's really interesting how the Bible's saying, okay, no, it's not about what can you do for yourself, how can you grow and accomplish all these things, but rather what can you give and what can you sacrifice and things like that. And it kind of also just helps to take success outside of the bounds of money and kind of form it towards like characteristics and things in your life rather instead, I guess. Okay, so my quote that I have for you guys that this was there are a lot, like I said, it's a very broad topic and there are a lot of really good definitions of success out there, but this is one that I really liked because for one, it defines success as kind of something that's like on a spectrum. It's not like, oh, okay, you're successful or you're unsuccessful. It's something where you're kind of growing towards it. So it says success is the extent to which you utilize your unique abilities, strengthen meaningful relationships, and enjoy the journey. And so what this is kind of doing is it's systematically giving you three different areas of your life that you can kind of focus in on. And it's starting to take this broad topic and it's starting to narrow it down and make it feel like, okay, you can focus here, here, and here. So that's why I chose this definition. So the first area that it talked about was you being a unique individual. And so the Bible verse I have for that is Romans 12:6 through 8, which says, "Having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them, if prophecy in proportion to our faith, if service in our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching." And then it kind of continues to give more and more like spiritual gifts that you can be given and kind of, what you're supposed to do with those things. And I really like this definition or this Bible verse that's related to this because I think it's interesting to see how we all like differ and we all have these different things because in high school it's really easy kind of to compare yourself like to the person beside you and think, okay, this person is smarter than me or more athletic than me or like more musically talented, whatever it might be. But this what this definition is giving us is it's saying, okay, well, just because they're really good at this and they're really successful in this area doesn't mean that you being successful in your area isn't also good. So I think that it's just really interesting and I really like how it kind of caters to all kinds of different people. So this is kind of the first area of your life that you want to focus on. Um, and this is a chart that we have talked about in this class before. So those of y'all who are in Mr. Tatterfield's class, you've seen this before. I think he came up with this chart. I'm not really sure. Kind of. But I'll kind of explain it for those of y'all who haven't had this class yet. What it basically does is it's going to ask you 4 questions, and then it's going to kind of narrow it down to your calling and what it is that you are supposed to do. So the first question is, what is something that you love? Like, what is something you're passionate about, something that you find interesting? And then the next question is, what is something that the world needs? What is a problem out there? Where is something that you can connect? Okay, you love this, and I see this problem. I can fill the gap. And then the next question is, so what is something that you have? What is a provision that you've been given? And I kind of want to call us out, all of us students in the room, because a huge provision that we've been given is the opportunity to go to a school. For one, a Christian school, which is huge, but just to go to a good school in general, I think is really big. And also for us, the next realistic step for a lot of us is to go into college, which is another huge provision that we've been given. So it's interesting to see where all of these connect. And then the next question is, what is something that you can do? What is a potential that you have? That could be like a talent, that kind of thing. So it's interesting to kind of fill out this chart and kind of see, okay, you like this, there's these problems, and kind of see, okay, what is your vocation? What is your calling? How can you be successful in catering to who you are as a unique individual? Okay, and then the next area of life is meaningful relationships. And the Bible says that above all, you want to love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. This is kind of a good way of showing how humans, like, it is so deeply rooted in us that we need to be in relationship with one another, that we need to have people that we can love. And what McClanahan says about that, he says that the single greatest factor influencing the satisfaction a person feels in life is the quality of their closest relationships. I really like this quote because I think it's funny to see, like, okay, you can measure how successful you are or how successful you are in this area by like the quality of your relationships, how healthy those relationships are. So I think it's another way of saying, like, okay, this can push you farther down the spectrum towards success as when you have these healthy relationships. And I also kind of just want to recognize that, like, you can have all these accomplishments in life and you can achieve all these things, but if you can't share those things with people and that you're in relationship with, like, it kind of takes away from the value of that in a way. And then the final thing is enjoying the journey, and this is my favorite one because I really love this quote by McClanahan where he says, "The last thing you want is to look back on your life having outachieved everyone else and realize that you never stopped to smell the roses." I had never heard the whole "smell the roses" thing before, but I actually saw it the other day in a show, and I didn't realize that was like a quote that people use. But I thought it's super interesting how it beautifully portrays what enjoying life is supposed to be about. Like, you're supposed to enjoy where you're at and enjoy what you're doing, and also it kind of just brings in creation in a way of like, okay, we've been given this world to enjoy and to, I don't know, have interesting experiences with. And then another quote I have is, "Maybe you're working too much." This was kind of, it's a very simple quote, but it was at the end of an article that I was reading where he was talking about, like, yeah, you want to achieve all these things, you want to try to do all these things, but part of being a successful person is sometimes just slowing down and realizing, okay, you're working too much, you're overworking yourself, and you're missing the point of why you're on this earth, because it's not to overachieve and to do all these things, but part of it is to just enjoy your life. So these are kind of the three things that he says as, like, okay, you want to be healthy and you want to be successful in each of these areas to kind of push yourself farther down like the spectrum towards success. Okay, and then I want to add this part to it because this article that I read and what I'm getting all these resources for, it wasn't necessarily a Christian article, but I think that, I mean, as Christians, like I said, it's going to be different, and so we also need to factor in this area of our life as Christians. So I kind of have three questions for you guys today. The first one is, am I growing in my understanding that Christ did everything for me and I can't do anything to save myself? And what I really like about this is that it's kind of just recognizing that, like, your success and your achievements, they're not rooted in you. Like, you're not the person that should be getting the glory for these things. You're not the person that should be like, okay, I'm so proud of myself for doing all this stuff, but it's about God. So I really like that question. And then it says, is my character growing every day in a way that aligns with God's word and plan for my life? And to me, this question is kind of just saying, like, are you trusting God? Are you trusting that the path that he has you on right now is the path he wants you on? Or, like, if he's making it clear that you're supposed to make this decision and you're like, no, I kind of want to do this other thing, like, being successful is trusting, okay, no, like, if this is what he wants for me, then this is what I'm going to do. And the final question is, am I acting in a Christ-like way towards others, feeding the hungry, serving the poor, etc.? And that's kind of just another emphasis on, like, am I serving? Am I giving of myself? Am I kind of losing this life in order to gain another? So these are like the four areas that I have kind of come up with in my research. I'm sure that there are probably other areas as well, but they're areas where you want to be healthy and where you want to be successful in order to kind of push yourself farther down the line for success. Okay, and then this is something super interesting that we talked about in this class before, but I like how it adds kind of some practical steps towards success, because it feels like such a broad topic sometimes, and it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like, I get these areas are huge, but what do you do? So this is 4 steps that you want to do, and you want to do it in this specific order because it kind of, all these statistics align with it if you do it in that order. So the first thing is you want to get a high school degree, which hopefully all of us in the room will get or have gotten. You want to work full time, and then you want to get married, and then you want to have children. And it's really important that you kind of do it in that order, because it says that following this sequence places 86% of men and women in the upper and middle brackets of income, which I think is super interesting. Like, that's a very large statistic. So it's kind of like, okay, it's these practical steps that you're like, okay, I can follow these and kind of get up in that higher brackets. And then it also says that the sequence has also given men and women a 97% chance of being financially stable by the time they are 28 to 34, which is also huge and significant. The reason that I want to put like huge emphasis on this is because I did talk about how your success isn't really defined by money and that kind of thing, but I do think that it is significant to be financially stable. That is part of being successful, but I didn't want it to be a huge thing because it's not the main thing. And then these statistics, like, they didn't seem super significant to me at first, because I was thinking, okay, most people typically get married before they have children. They typically, get a high school degree, do all these things. But actually, around 55% of parents ages 28 to 34. And I think that this was in America. I actually can't really remember. But it says that they had their first child before they were married, which is like that's the majority. So I thought that was super interesting how that kind of all worked out. And then to end, I just have a few outside opinions. The FM is Mr. Marcinak. He goes to my church. He's like a lawyer, owns his own firm. He's someone that I consider to be very successful. He also is just like very involved in the church, and so he's successful in that area as well. And then Dr. R, that's Ella Randall's mom. She is also someone that I really look up to as a role model because I really care about the medical field. Like that's something that I want to go into, and her being a doctor and also like a mother and all those things. Well, and then CG is my dad. He's also someone that I see as being very successful just from what I've seen with him. But so Mr. Marcinek said that his definition of success is using the gifts God has given you to the maximum extent possible to give glory to Him and to help others. I think that was kind of interesting because it goes back to the whole unique individual because it's like, okay, use the gifts that you've been given, which is something specific. And then Dr. Randall said that I think three of the biggest hindrances to success are pride, selfishness, and short term thinking. For example, thinking that you can do everything on your own without the help of others, and God is prideful and can lead to failure. And I liked how she brought up short term thinking because I think that a lot of times people either get stuck as being short term thinkers or kind of like too much of a long term thinker. So I think it's kind of interesting to see like, okay, being successful is kind of trying to find your in between of like I'm thinking ahead to the future, but also I'm kind of living in the moment where I'm at now. And then my dad said some practical steps to success are to have a plan, work the plan, take the lead and solve the problem, learn how to listen, develop a non anxious presence, set boundaries, and develop organizational second sight, which I was kind of confused what that meant at first. But what that means is kind of like being able to look ahead and see, okay, here's a possible problem. Here's kind of just being able to look ahead, basically. And he said, be Netflix while everyone else is still renting from Blockbuster, which I kind of thought was interesting. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you for listening.
We'll open it up to our guests first. Y'all got any questions, comments,
feedback? American Dream. I thought about it with the American Dream a little bit. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Good. Well, initially I was gonna go into like kind of figuring out how to be like a successful woman in the medical field and also be a mother, which is kind of like very specific, but it's something that I'm interested in. And so when I did a little bit of research on that, I kind of found it would talk about like focusing on these specific areas of your life and being really intentional about that kind of thing. And so I felt like that was kind of talking about like how to be successful in your life, and I kind of wanted to broaden it to apply to more people. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. Yes. Oh. Hmm. He okay. I know it was a Forbes article. I gotta be honest. I don't exactly remember who he was, but it was an article about defining success on your own terms, and I really just like everything he said. I felt like it made a lot of sense, and he said it in like a way that was very I don't know. I really like the way he said things, but I'm not exactly sure. Probably should. Yes, Pastor Nick.
Question: Why, for those students, why would you say completion of high school that's success? How would you call?
Mhm. I would. I think that like in high school we can really tell how well we're doing at things based on like our grades and that kind of thing. But from what I've heard is like when you get out of that, and even when you get out of college, especially like you can't really measure how well you're doing based off of grades anymore. So you kind of want to know like, okay, how do I know how successful I'm being in my life? So I think that I really liked how this gave you areas of your life. So it gave you something like something specific to focus on when you kind of don't really have that anymore, I guess.
things. You mentioned like you brought up the long-term thinking, and then somewhere else in the conversation, you brought up in order to be successful long-term, there needs to be everyday consistency. I forget the terminology. Could you connect those dots a little bit more? Like speak a little bit more to like whatever long-term goals we may have, whatever 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever you want to call it, whatever those long-term goals are. How does that translate into everyday behaviors, everyday, dare I say, habits?
Okay, like you're kind of saying like the practical steps that
Yeah.
you can be taking right now.
Like it's one thing to say like I'm interested in the medical field. Cool, like that's where your sights are set, right? What's the advice for? Okay, what do I do tomorrow? Wake up tomorrow, or I mean, I know that's wildly specific, but like, whatever your I just here's what's behind this question. I'll go ahead and show my hand, right? Y'all are as seniors. Let me talk to you. Y'all are about to be more in control of your schedule than you have ever been. You're about to have it's a good feeling because y'all got a lot more time on your hands, frankly. Take fewer classes, and maybe more work, but it's fewer classes, weirder times of the day. Like, I don't know if you've heard from your friends from college or not. You got class at 10 a.m. and then like 3 p.m. and then whatever. And mom and dad are not there to hold your hand through it, right? You have more control over your schedule than you will ever, than probably you will ever have, to be honest. Sorry, it only gets more busy from here. So with that in mind, it's like whatever your goals are set, it just becomes that much more important for you to steward your time really well in the meantime. So again, like the question being, whatever the long-term goals of success you have, how does that translate into day by day?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to like the quote by my dad where he was talking about like, okay, you need to make a plan for yourself kind of and see like if you're saying you already have your goals in a way, right? So like if you already have your goals or if you need to set them, like set your goals and then kind of make a plan. I'm a very like kind of schedule oriented person and I think that would be really beneficial or will be beneficial going into that next stage of life is being like, okay, I have these goals and I want to do these specific things and also just like the working the plan. Like it's so easy to be like, okay, I want to do these things, like I want to do all these things when I get older or whatever. But I think it's really important that you're making sure you're like actually taking the steps towards doing that. I don't have like a lot of super practical steps, but I would say that's my answer is like being intentional about actually following through with what you kind of set for yourself.
Any other guests?
Back to the definition.
Yes. Oh, no. Like, I didn't like how. Sorry.
I'm wondering, like, kind of easy to like, what is it that makes Jesus successful? If he's supposed to be a model, based on this definition, it feels like. So what do we do with? I don't know. I feel like the prevailing notion of his time would have been that he was a failure. And it feels like a little bit of a cop out to say, well, we're all here at our Christian school. But like, what do we do with the prevailing notion of his followers who, at least at some point, right?
So you're saying like you feel like Jesus fulfilled all these things, but why did they think he was a failure during his time?
I think so. I think I'm just asking, like, based on actual narrative accomplishment, what is it that makes him?
The marriage,
Rejected by men, despised.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I do think that a lot of the reason why people saw like Jesus as a failure and why they disliked him so much was almost in the fact that he was so successful. Like they would try to catch him all the time with like messing up and that kind of thing. So then it was like, okay, like you can't catch him, like he can't mess up. So then you're thinking, okay, then he's just a failure. Like, I think that was almost like just like an angry answer, like a cop out. But I don't know. That would probably just be my answer because I don't.
So I was thinking along the same lines. Couldn't figure out a way to put it into a question. So I'm sorry if this doesn't actually come out as a question. But I wonder if it's something like the fact that Jesus was measuring success by a different metric. And I think this is the importance of your project, frankly. Like this is why y'all need to be. I hope you're listening. You need to be listening because we're getting thrust into a world that has a certain way of measuring success, such that if you don't measure up, you're not a success. And it could be very well possible that in the eyes of the world, you're kind of a failure, and yet be the most successful in the best way possible. So again, I don't know that there's a question here. I think it's something worth all of us pondering a little bit. That whatever, yeah, I'm with you. I like the definition because it's just wide enough to include all the things that we would want to include. Whoever this guy was, right? But I think we all, and go talk to some of the old people in your life, and they'll be able to tell you better than I can. Every follower of Jesus has that decision. He said, "There's the broad way, really easy, super popular. A lot of people find it. One problem: it ends in destruction. So in the meantime, it seems really successful, right? There's this other way that just seems it's more of a climb than it is a walk. You know, one really great thing about it, it ends in life. So we're measuring our success by while doing the jobs that everybody else is doing, while pursuing the careers that everybody else is pursuing. Y'all are doing all wonderfully important work, all the different paths that y'all are going down. But don't be surprised if when you try to go measure the success that you're accomplishing, that you're achieving, you are using a very different metric than most of your colleagues. And you're going to need to be okay with that because for followers of Jesus, let's be honest, which metric we want to use, the world's or his? So let's make sure to define success the way Jesus would. That's again, like it's hard to put this into a question, but like yeah, I think we want to be successful, but maybe it's a matter of measuring that success the way that the one following measures.
So that's
like how do we
walk this journey. I guess you're kind of wasted as a carpenter, creator God. Parts where it's friends with the parts that are sheer misery. When's back on the story, you're like,
Yeah, I feel like that question's hard to answer too because like if you're asking like okay he was just content with the fact that he's a carpenter that kind of if that was a question for just like any normal person I could be like okay well part of being content is like that you're trusting that this is part of God's plan for you but I do think that that's a harder question when it's actually God that I don't know because like that's my I'm like okay well you can trust this but then yeah I don't
Yes, like if y'all want to keep asking questions, feel free.
my people, let's take a look at
Mr. Morris has on the leave. Classmates, y'all got any questions or comments?
Caden's got a question.
Go ahead, real quick. You can be late. Sequence?
The sequence yes
Okay, so let's say 86% are in the higher bracket. Let's say like if a female like isn't fertile.
no I think this is just kind of like in the typical situation, this is what you want to follow, but this isn't like a definition of what it would be. Like if you are outside of this, if you, I don't know, I was thinking about that, like for women that like maybe get a degree and they never end up working full time, like that kind of thing, like you can still be successful within that. I think that this is just like a very broad gaze kind of, I guess.
So it's like a try to follow.
Yeah, but like if you, yeah, but it's not something that you have to, like if you don't want to have children or if you can't have children, then that doesn't, I don't think that makes you like, okay, now you can't be successful because you didn't follow this sequence. I think it's just trying to give like this very broad topic some practical steps that apply to most people.
I'll jump in just because I pointed it out to you and I feel like partially responsible for this. Um, this was a thing that sociologists found. This wasn't like a prescription of what should happen. Really interesting that when people are successful, they seem to have followed this pattern. And this pattern is also very consistent with what we would say a biblical way of doing things, right? So it's like, oh, what do you know? How interesting that when you do things the way God wants you to do them, turns out pretty good for you. But again, like I think Claire handled it well in the presentation, where it's like it's just interesting. It's not a rule. But that's I'm really glad you brought that up because frankly, like, sorry guys, y'all need to be aware of this. Personally, I've seen my wife make decisions about her career. She told me when we were dating, I'm getting this degree to use it. I'm not here for a ring. And sister, which was also we were dating, so maybe that was weird. Anyways, so like cool, like this is the kind of decision that y'all need to be making like right now. But also, I've seen her heart change as God has brought us down our path and our journey. Yeah, she taught. She had a really good teaching career, and then it was time to have a up. And here's my point. She had to make decisions as a woman that I, as a man, never had to make. And that was very educational for me. It was very enlightening for me because I saw her needing to make decisions that were where her immediate quote unquote success, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, the metric of her success was, wow, you only taught for how many? She would be more than happy to say, you want to measure success? One's in the middle school hallway and one's over in the elementary. That's my measure. I'd be happy to tell you that. So again, like a description of what typically happens isn't necessarily a prescription of what you. I love your perspective on it. Yeah, this is God's plan for me, and it doesn't align with that. I'm excited to see what God's success is for your life. Anybody else still open? Still open for conversation?
With that 86%,
No, I don't think that there was. It was all based on like, okay, if you are following this. But no, yeah, there wasn't. Sorry. Not that, at least not that I knew. Yes. Um.
Men and women both have to be
Oh, you're saying like does like okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. It didn't talk specifically about that, but I would assume that it is for both men and women. But I don't know because I would think if you're married, then your income is like both of y'all, so it might. Sorry.
What you got?
So obviously, but what does it look like when, or what does it look like? Like the three things, I like the three things. Is failure when you're only, where do you draw the line?
Interesting. That's why I really liked how he talked about okay, it's the extent. So it kind of makes it like, okay, this is a spectrum. This is like, here are different areas of your life. So you being, I don't want to say like, I don't like to think like, okay, this person's just a failure. Like if you're doing poorly in your relationships, like you just have bad relationships or you're isolating yourself, you don't have any at all. I think that you're failing in that area of your life. But if you're doing good in those other two areas, like you're still being successful in a way, but it's not. Does that make sense? Like it's like a spectrum. It's like, okay, you're doing most of it, but you're not like fulfilling all of those. So I think that you can fail in different like areas of your life, but don't. I mean, I guess unless you're failing in all of the areas of your life, then I guess that makes you a failure. I don't know if that does that answer your question, kind of.
It's like a balance. I just didn't know if it was something not having
Yeah. No, I get it. It's not like, okay, if I don't have this, then you're completely a failure. I mean, at least I don't think that that's what he was trying to say. I think he was trying to say like, okay, this is the extent to which you're doing all of these things, and if you're not doing this thing, then okay, yeah, that's pushing you back. You're failing in that area, but you're not like.
I wonder if there's something too, like that they all blend together, right? That you got really strong relationships, and that or speaking from personal experience, where the relationships in your life anchor you not in the other areas. Probably vice versa. Anybody else? I got one for you. Just to try to get some conversation. In your experience, and based on your research, based on everything we've talked about so far, relationships seem to have a play a really important part. Right? As you, so it's a twofold question. Number one, looking backwards and coaching students that are coming behind you, what would you coach them, suggest to them? What are the most important relationships they need to be looking at? What are the most important relationships that they need to nurture and foster and get as much out of it as possible? Like, obviously, not take advantage of it, but like really invest in these relationships, because standing where you're standing now, these are the relationships that got you there. And the second part of the question is, what would your guess be? Do those relationships change at all, or are you seeing how that's going to be different over the next several years for you? Or I guess really like, does the answer change at all? What was the most important relationships in the past that got you to this point? Do you see that changing at all?
I give a shit. I think that the one of the biggest things that I think is important is kind of to have like accountability, like a relationship where you're looking up to someone, and they don't even necessarily have to be older than you, but I do think that that is can be very helpful, and that's something that I have been able to have. It honestly, I wouldn't say that at my old school I made having accountability and talking with to people that are older than me and wiser than me very important, but I have been able to see that here at Southside, and that's been very beneficial. So I would encourage a lot of like high schoolers, younger high schoolers, to find someone like that, because having friends is great and it's very important. But like if you need to go to your friends about something that like you need good advice on, then that's not always like a sure thing. And then yeah, also just like close friendships with I think that that's been very important. Just like my friends have been there for me through a lot of things. And then yeah, I guess the other is like romantic relationships, and I think that that can be beneficial in high school, just like to learn like what you're interested in. But I don't think that that is. Those are kind of the three areas. Oh, and then you said, and how have they changed, right?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
What do you
or do I
think?
see them changing?
Yeah.
Kind of?
What do you think? I mean, obviously you haven't been down that road yet, right? But what do you, based on everything that you've studied, like maybe I can put it this way, like what's a concern, specific on the relationship stuff? What do you see as like I'm not going to say worried. What are you worried about? But what are you looking forward, thinking, man, I really got
Mm-hmm. Well, first to base that, I would say like I can see over high school some of the relationships that I have held on to for the entire time, which is not a lot because obviously middle school side lost some connections. But it is interesting to see like the people that you get to know really well and that you kind of um, can confide in a lot. Like those relationships, I think tend to last a lot longer than maybe the person that you kind of just like have fun with, hang out with. But yeah, I would say in the future, I would see my relationships. I would see myself probably getting closer with people more similar to myself, which is kind of random. But like for all of us, we're in a small school, so a lot of our friends are very different than us, which I think it's very good in a lot of ways. But once you get into college, you kind of get to broaden and get to know people that like you have more similarities with. So I guess that's how I would see it changing. But also, I think that.
All right, last call. Anybody?
Yes, sir. And their relationships are just successful in general. Um, this is kind of reminding. I was thinking through this. I was like, can you be successful and not be a Christian? Which is like part of what you're saying. I don't think it's all of what you're saying. I think that the most important area of I know that the article had 3 areas, but then I kind of added the 4th area of Christianity. I think that obviously that's the most important area of those all. So you not being able to fulfill that area of your life sets you back a lot. Just hit that. It's gonna be loud. But I think that in relationships, if you can't be grounded in Christ and if you don't have that understanding, I don't know if I would say that doesn't make the relationship successful or like means that it can't be successful, but I think that it means that in the long term it's going to be very difficult because like I don't know what I've talked about with my parents or with my mom really is like when it comes to marriage, if you're not in a Christian marriage and like all these struggles come up, like you're gonna want to just kind of give up, a lot of times. But being grounded in that kind of thing is like okay, like this is what Christ does. Like loving a person means okay, you get with them, you get through the hard times. So I think that it gives you a better chance of having a successful relationship if you're grounded in Christ. But I don't know. There are a lot of like long lasting marriages and that kind of thing that.
I told y'all the thing about like, sorry, I got an A on your test. I didn't even study. But what if you had a like, oh, I got a, you know, you missed like 2. Yeah, imagine if you had studied, right? Like every once in a while, people will be like, well, these relationships, people can be successful outside of Jesus. Right? People can have long-lasting marriages outside of Jesus. But imagine if they had Jesus. I don't think that that's the flex that a lot of people think it is. It's like, oh, we've been married for 40 years and we're not Christians. Look at us. Yeah, but imagine if you had had Jesus. I gotta think that that's like behind a lot of this stuff. Like, yeah, the world has a way to measure success, and a lot of people are very. But then Jesus' parable of that wealthy farmer, where it's like he built bigger barns to store all his stuff, and then he died. And then whose will all these things be? And I'm not trying to be too morose here. I mean, Jesus said it, right? Like, then what? And then what? For the person outside of Christ, there will always be a then what. For the person in Jesus, we always have an answer to. Be thankful for. All right, thank you, Claire. We'll